Hello and welcome to the Trail and Adventure Motorbike Podcast with me, Clive Barber, and my good mate, Noel Tom. For the days when you can't ride your bike, there's always the Trail and Adventure Motorbike Podcast. Hey, we're back. Apologies for the lack of podcasts in the last couple of weeks. Sadly, my mother-in-law died, so we've been sorting stuff out. But we're back. And back with something slightly different this week. I met up with Steve and Ross. Ross was in Season 5, Episode 9 with his pal Riff, and they rode all the way through to Asia. So Steve and Ross are a father and son duo, and it was a real honour to spend some time with them whilst they were visiting the Lake District. And it just made me think about getting to ride with my son, who has started to show an interest in motorbikes. This episode is aimed at getting young riders in the saddle safely out on the trails. There seems to be a lot of talk at the moment about this being the last generation of motorcyclists, which, to be honest, seems nonsense to me. So anyway, this is us getting down with the kids and finding out what's going on in the world of young people. Let's get on with it. Right. So, young fella, my lad, tell us who you are and why you're here.
I am Archie. I am here to kind of get an insight and explain how a non-rider gets into riding a motorbike and kind of what I need to do, what courses I should be taking, and where's best to find those and who I should speak to, I guess. But for some reason, I've decided to come on this podcast with you guys.
Yeah. We've forgotten most of that stuff, probably. But you didn't tell us your full name.
Yeah, there's a reason for that. My full name is Archie Barber.
Oh, any relation?
Might be. Hi, Dad.
Archie, where are you in the house in relation to... Are you just down the hallway?
Luckily, no, I'm not. So I've actually moved in with my girlfriend a little bit further south.
Oh, I had no idea.
Yeah, he's a big boy now. He's moved out. So how old are you now?
23.
But you're 24 this year,
Yeah,
aren't you?
yeah.
Which is important when we talk about licence requirements a bit later on. So what is it about motorcycles that attracts you? Why do you want to get a motorbike?
Well, growing up, you have always been on motorbikes, with motorbikes, and seeing your dad going out on weekends on his motorbikes and just hearing like the noises of the bikes that start up whenever you're setting off. It was always interesting me at a younger age. And I think there's also that adrenaline side to it of being on two wheels rather than inside a car on four wheels. It just looks a lot more fun.
Has Clive tried to talk you into it as you were growing up?
No. So he's actually decided to try and keep me away from as long as possible.
Oh, that's right. He always says that, yes.
You've heard his horror stories of injuries, and I think he was kind of trying to discourage me from ever repeating any of those, I guess.
It still worries me now because if you do it and anything does happen to you, you know whose fault it is, don't you?
Yeah, yours.
Archie, I mean, have you heard what your dad has described you as in the past? And not just you, all you and your fellow siblings.
Not on so much on the podcast, but kind of...
Oh, in real life, even worse. He's described you in the past and your brothers as... This, I can't even bring myself to say it.
Say it. I'll give you a pound.
As not fully... No, I won't say the profanities, but he's described you as not being fully formed in a way that's suitable for riding motorcycles.
That's true of not just my sons, and I think it is mainly boys. I could be wrong, it could be girls as well, but I have read somewhere or heard somewhere that boys' brains or men's brains, part of your brain isn't fully developed that makes you aware of hazards and danger, which is why...
Bullshit.
We send young people to war.
Exactly. I knew you were going to say that. Would you agree with that, Archie? Do you feel immune to danger and the consequences
Well,
of...
Can I answer that? I could show you a photograph, or a collage, in fact, a picture, of the number of times I have sat in A&E with young Mr. Archie Barber. And I must, at one point, one of the last times we went to A&E, the very kind nurse looked at me and went, "Are you known to social services?"
No.
Seriously, for real. Because we had been to A&E so frequently. Because he was, possibly still is, an idiot.
Archie, this is a safe space, obviously. You have the right of reply. You're holding the spoon now, so you can reply to that.
Everything he says is probably correct. When I was younger, I was playing rugby, and rugby is probably not the best sport or the sport your mum and dad want you to go into at first at a younger age. At least he encouraged me not to go on a motorbike and do motocross racing, because I'm sure there was probably going to be more accidents and incidents that way.
To be fair to you, you played rugby at quite a high level, so a lot of your injuries were down to rugby. But I guess my concern is if that you carry on that kind of behaviour, motorcycling can get very ugly very soon and at much higher speeds. That's not really a question, is it?
I mean, I can turn it into a question.
Go on then.
Being a rugby player, that it comes with this sort of reputation that you're quite boisterous and you're very much all or nothing, go for it without a thought. But usually in partnership with that, there's a lot of alcohol that comes with it. And if you're on the road, due to the law, you cannot drink and ride a motorbike unless I've been told it's on private property.
Even then, it's possibly best not to. You've actually ridden a motorbike twice. Once was at some fairground thing on some little automatic kiddie bike, and I think you had to have about 3 goes on it. And then the second time was in one of Noel's fields on a trials bike, which you fell off.
That didn't end well, did it? And I think we were partly to blame for that, because it's, as much as we think it's a simple bike to ride, it's not a great bike. It's a weird bike to get on as your first bike, isn't it? Just because of the riding position.
Yeah, it was Dad's old Montesa, being on a bike that doesn't have a seat.
Tried to get you to stand up, and that's when you fell off. Did the old whiskey throttle thing.
But you also tried to get me to go up a stream that's at the edge of the field, which was rocks, water, slippy ground.
If you're not falling off, you're not trying hard enough, son.
Archie, are you inclined to want to go fast? This is something I hear a lot from young people who are about to start riding. They always say, I wouldn't trust myself. I just want to go as fast as possible. Would that be you?
I don't think it will, because Clive is nodding his head. But realistically, no, because I think the type of riding I'd want to do is the off-roading, the trail riding and the stuff like that. And yes, you can go fast, but if you go fast on one of them, you're coming off fairly quickly. The idea of being on your big MotoGP style bikes on the road doesn't really interest me. From hearing stories of you and my dad and watching the films you've made, it looks way more fun being off-road than driving on-road.
And you've done quite a lot of mountain biking, haven't you? So that's a head start.
Yeah, I mean, obviously where we live, the mountain biking trails, you can go off a field and you're on some sort of trail. It's great.
You did enjoy going fast on your mountain bike, though.
Yes, because it's in a more controlled environment. The only damage I'm going to do is to myself, really. It'd be
interesting to know what people say to themselves just to slow themselves down, because I got on my 1050 at the weekend in that we had one lovely day up here in the lakes, and I went out for a blast and met a couple of guys that listened to the podcast. And it's just intoxicating going fast. I hadn't been on that bike for a good few months now, and I got on it, and it's it's not even that fast really. It's 100 brake horsepower, but it's really good fun. But you have to tell yourself regularly, stop being a twat, slow down. And I think the ability to do that when you're younger is limited.
When you ride now, Clive, do you spend a lot of time thinking, how much would it hurt if I fell off right now?
Well, that's the thing. Once you have fallen off and you've broken something, you know how much it hurts. I mean, I spent 3 months in hospital and about 6 months on crutches in absolute agony. Every other little bump and bruise, you bash your elbow on something, on a table when you're just walking past it. But you do that at 30 or 40 miles an hour, you're going to know about it, aren't you? So I am very, very much more aware now of how much it does hurt when you fall off. We'll be right back after this quick ad break. Today's episode is brought to you by trialsday.com. As you know, we've spent some time at Trials Day, and they offer some of the best training I've ever been on. If you're interested in trials or just improving your off-road riding, I strongly recommend you give Trials Day a shout. They offer training from complete novices, i.e. people that have never even ridden a motorcycle before, through to training for current and future world champions. Highly recommended. Give Stu a call. Get yourself booked on. You won't regret it. And while we're on the subject of trials, why not check out TrialTube YouTube channel and the TrialTube podcast on all of your favourite podcast platforms. Great listening with former cycle trials world champion Danny Butler and Stu Day from Trials Day.
I'm trying to think what slowed me down over the years, and I think a lot of it has been mechanical sympathy in a way. I've always had quite old bikes with steel frames and steel tanks, and they were never really that suited to riding along bumpy trails very quickly, or they were uncomfortable to ride quickly. But also I do spend a lot of time thinking, how much would it hurt on this particular track?
Archie, what sort of bike are you thinking of getting? Have you got something in mind?
It's not so much like a trail bike or an off-roady bike.
Sorry, can I just interrupt you that when you do say what you're going to get, we're going to tell you why it's the wrong one. Obviously, that's what we do.
To be fair, for the type of riding I said I want to do, it's definitely the wrong one. But you know the old-style cafe racers, in particularly the new build of the BMW.
Oh, Jesus.
This. I did not expect this. What are you talking about? Like an R9T, a great big boxer engine thing?
The stripped-down, proper old vintage racer that's got no rear fender. It's just a seat with a rear wheel, your tank, and all the monstrous kit underneath you.
And you want to get off and ride that in the Lake District on the trails?
Well, obviously, it's not very much a trail bike.
No, it's not a trail bike at all.
I just like the look of it, okay?
You like the look of it?
As a non-rider, you want to look good while you're riding a bike. So the first thing has to be a good-looking bike.
He needs more than one bike, doesn't he?
He needs more than one bike, yeah.
Where do you think I get that from, Dad?
I'm changing the locks to the garage.
You're going down a different road here, Archie, I feel, somehow. This isn't a trail riding bike. What do you want a bike for? What do you really want? What do you really want to do on this bike?
I mean, this bike, I just want it because it looks cool. You're cruising through Snake Pass or something on this really rough-sounding bike. You look cool, you look good. Open face helmet, the lot. That's more road riding, that kind of stuff I like to do. But the trail riding, so I'm hoping that Dad buys a new bike and he just gives me one of his.
That's probably not going to happen.
Having a little bike on a trail for someone who's starting would be a lot easier. It saves me having to lug a big bike over rocks. I think I would have more control of a little bike.
You've learnt something by listening to the podcast, at least. Let's talk about what you need to do to pass your test. Have you done any research on this? If not, I might have to tell people.
My girlfriend's brother recently did his direct access course.
Hello, Toby. He got the wrong bike, by the way. He's not going trail riding.
No, he's going road riding. So I'm going to have to find someone else to go trail riding with. The direct access is, you got 2 modules in that, I believe?
Yeah, so there's 2 things you have to do before you get into the actual riding modules. There's the compulsory basic training.
Yep.
Which is you spend like an hour or so with an instructor in a car park just learning the basics, clutch, throttle control, how to brake, that type of thing. They'll take you out on the road for about 40 minutes and get you kind of used to riding on the road. Once you've got your CBT, depending on what age you are, you can ride with L plates. That's my understanding.
Okay.
And the second part is you need to have a theory test, multiple choice questions based on road signs, that type of thing. And then you've also got the hazard perception. So you have to click your mouse every time you see a potential hazard as you watch a video. Then you go and do your Module 1 and Module 2. Now, Module 1, from my understanding, and I'm not an expert on this because it was different when I last did my test 20-odd years ago, is that the Module 1 is the stuff that you do in a car park round cones and things like that, getting your, so they can understand that you've got the basic control down pat. Even simple things like taking your bike on and off its stand and things like that. And then the Module 2 bit is when you actually go out on the road. The instructor follows you and tells you where to go, which is sort of the more traditional test. There are different licenses as well, depending on what route you take. Now, if you take the direct access route, you can get an AM license when you're 16, which means you can ride a bike 50cc or less. There's an A1 license when you're 17, allows you to ride a 125. And then there's the A, things start getting a bit more interesting. When you're 19, you can get an A2 license, which limits you to a bike of 35 kilowatts, which is about 47 brake horsepower, I think. And then finally, once you're 24, you can get your full license by doing all of the things we mentioned above.
Are you saying you don't get a full motorbike license until you're 24?
Not quite true, because if you take your A2 license at 19 and then you ride on the road for 2 years, you can then get your full license.
And that's just a case of applying for it. There's no more testing.
I think that is the case. So you could potentially get it when you're 21. So presumably, Archie, you're going to wait until you're 24 and do the full direct access.
I think that's the plan, yeah. Get on a bike as quickly as possible.
I'm still not going to sleep well tonight over this bike choice thing.
No, it's ridiculous.
It's really disturbed me, because I really thought we were going down a very set, sensible route, and we're not. We veered off wildly.
I think the first bike I would definitely get would be your CRF 300. Well, actually, let me ask you, what do you think is a good starting trail bike?
Before we answer that, I was just going to say, if your first bike was not Clive's CRF 300, one of your own, would that be a terrible scenario for you?
Not really.
Realistically, you're not going to be able to spend $6,000 on a motorcycle when you're 24, are you? Let's face it. The options open to you is probably you're going to get a second-hand CRF 250, the older version.
Okay.
A fine motorcycle.
It is a fine motorcycle. Noel's got one. He'll probably not let you have a go on it, but you can have a look at it.
Nice.
Yeah, that doesn't fill you with dread. That will be fine, wouldn't it? Would it, Archie, do you think?
Definitely the riding I want to do, definitely a trail bike would be the more important thing to get. Once I get more into the bikes, that's when I'll look at the Cafe Racer road style bikes. Being able to do the type of riding you guys do will give me more avenues to meet more people to then branch out into different motorbikes.
That's the key thing, isn't it, really, right? So let's imagine the scenario. So the scenario is you've just passed your test, you've now got your full license, you've bought yourself a bike, a second-hand CRF. It's a bit scabby, but it works. It's a Honda. It's going to run forever. Where are you going? What's your first trip?
The first trip I would really like to do would be trans-Euro trail stuff. Going to maybe France, from England, get on a ferry to Amsterdam, do Netherlands, Germany, France, or whatever order they come in the map. I'm not 100%.
Do you think that, because Clive often says, and I know it to be true, he doesn't like riding by himself. He's a very social animal. Do you think you'd be quite happy to go off on these trips by yourself?
To be honest, I don't think I could. I get quite anxious about being in a foreign land or a foreign place on my own. But I think it would be easier to do that than go, say, with my partner or my dad, because I think I would want to be in control of things. My dad especially tends to take control of a lot of things.
Does he?
But in that aspect, I'll be with my dad. So if anything happens, I'll just count on him anyway.
Oh, so the dream isn't for you two to ride off into the European sunset together?
No, I think my dream is beat him to Iceland on a motorbike. Seeing the Northern Lights before he does.
I think what he's doing, Noel, is like a lot of people. He's seen the films and he wants to be in our gang. And you're not the first person to ask, can I be in your gang? Because you guys are fucking cool.
I've not specifically asked, but the nature of my job and working with cameras, if you need a videographer, it'd make my life easier if I ride a bike with you lot and create your fancy little films.
You need to build your own gang, surely.
Yeah, I would love that, but I don't think there's enough people my age getting into this sort of riding. A lot of the people I see my age have your road bikes and go herring round corners. I mean, especially being at Devil's Bridge, the people who I see my age have your typical road bikes and wear your race leathers and stuff like that. Whereas the riding I want to do is, I would say, more of an older generation.
There must be out there. There must be a way of connecting with these people, even if it's just a few. Something like the internet might be the answer.
Yeah, that might help.
Have you heard of the internet?
The internet.
Do you feel in any way disappointed, shall we say, that I didn't encourage you as children? Now, I remember we bought a go-kart, and I remember saying to you as little kids, you were seeing me going off on my motorbike, and I was saying, now, before you can get a motorbike, you have to learn to race a kart first.
Yeah.
And obviously that's just nonsense, isn't it? But it was just a way of me providing you with something fun and adrenaline-filled to do without the danger of riding a motorbike.
I disagree with that. I think it was a way for you to be away all week during the week, to then piss off by yourself at the weekends. as little contact as possible.
I'm confused. Is this the karting or the motorcycling?
No. So the karting, yes, he did that because he felt sorry for being away all the time.
There is some truth in the fact that I was away, but I was away for work. But it was only 3 nights a week. And then I would try and go out on my motorbike once a month.
Yeah, he's not often on his bike. He doesn't ride half as much as people think he does.
Get more frequently now we're all older and moving out.
Fucking right it is. We need to do something to find young people, don't we, really? I'm surprised something like that. Maybe the TRF should have a youth section or something like that. You could join the Trail Riders Fellowship, Archie.
What's that, Clive?
The Trail Riders Fellowship is the body, the club, the organisation that has protected trail riding and kept the lanes open since about 1970, I think it started. It's a venerable organisation. You pay a annual subscription, and a lot of that money just goes towards legal battles to keep the lanes open. But also, it's grown massively in recent years. When I joined, there was less than 3,000 members, but it's up to over 9,000 members now. So I would imagine some of those are younger folk.
Yeah, the TRF must have some good stats on the demographic of modern-day trail riding.
You would assume so, because they would know everybody's age. But I think we all know the answer, really, don't we, that most people in the TRF are older, let's say. I'm saying old, but they're definitely older.
I can imagine what the graph looks like.
Started watching a video today where they were saying that motorcycling is dying with this generation. I don't necessarily believe that's the truth. I think possibly what it is as you get older, you don't know so many young people. I think there are younger people riding out there. It's just a case of finding them, really. Should we let them join our gang sometimes?
Sometimes. Yeah. Of course we should.
Really?
He's already in it.
Thanks, Noel.
There are many splinter groups.
You've got many gangs.
Yeah.
I've only got one gang. I mean, I was looking through your photographs that you posted today thinking, didn't get invited to that trip. Didn't get invited to that trip. Yep, that trip. Didn't get invited to that one. Oh, look, there's me.
I don't know how that's happened, but it has happened.
Constantly. So the other thing I wanted to talk about was once you've got your test, that's kind of when you learn to ride properly. And I would recommend to any new and young rider to have a look at doing some advanced training as well. I found that really, really helpful. And as an adult with young children, I kind of thought it was my responsibility to do that, really. But it was really, really good, high-quality training. You're getting trained by some very experienced people. And they teach you to what they call, and the police call, make progress. So that's basically riding so you make good progress, but doing it in a safe manner. And I thought that was really good.
I remember learning a hell of a lot just on if the CBT's done right, I think you learn a hell of a lot just on your CBT, which is your first introduction to it.
Yeah, definitely. I really enjoyed doing my CBT. I think, I don't know what they cost now, but, if you look, probably about 120 quid. It's a good fun day out. Also, Archie, I'm going to try and get the 4 of us, me, you, Albie and Wilf, booked in on a trials day course as well. So that'd be a great place because they do train a lot of brand new riders. So if you imagine the throttle and the clutch and the brake control you need for riding a trials bike, they'll give you that. So when you do get onto your CBT and you're riding a proper bike for the first time, you'll have all those skills pretty much ironed out, I think.
That was going to be one of my questions. Is it worth doing that trial day before I go for my direct access? Or would it be direct access and then a bit of the trial stuff for the trail riding I eventually want to do?
I don't think it really matters. I think on your direct access, they'll teach you all of that stuff anyway. But I just think if you are going to do trail riding, then trials riding is invaluable, really. Because you ride very differently off-road to the way you actually ride on the tarmac. Both would be excellent, and they're both a lot of fun as well.
I remember when I took my test, I'd been driving for quite a long time, probably been driving for 20 years before I took my motorbike test. But I remember thinking there was some sort of secret rules of riding a motorbike that were different to driving a car. A lot of it was about road positioning. And I could never really get a definitive answer off my instructor as to where I should be on the road a lot of the time. But in the end, I sort of realized that it's not so much of a mystery. All I'm getting at is that if you can drive a car, you can ride a push bike, so you can ride a bike easy enough. You know the rules of the road from driving a car. You're more than halfway there, really.
That positioning you spend a lot of time in your advanced training looking at the position on the road where you should be.
I think at that point I was just wanting my instructor to say you should always be 2 feet from the central line, and of course it wasn't that simple. I was looking for a simple answer that he obviously wasn't.
Yeah, there is no simple answer. I mean, that kind of is the answer, but then you have to give up that position if you're going over, if you can't see what's coming the other way, if you're going over a humpback bridge or you're approaching a bend. But it also teaches you, when you can get back on the throttle coming out of a bend. It's things like that absolutely invaluable stuff. Recommend it to everybody.
It's the joy of road riding to me is that I'm constantly trying to perfect where I am on the road. Never get tired of trying to get better and better at it.
Archie, you've mentioned filming. You were in a very fortunate position where you actually got to spend a whole season filming and working with a British superbike team, PBM, Paul Bird Motorsport. How did that come about?
Must have been the 2022 season with Tom Sykes and Josh Brooks as the riders. That came about because I had gone to Kendal College to do a film course. I had been working with cameras. I'd done other broadcast-related filming a few years prior, but then COVID came in and scuppered all of live sports for everyone. So there's none of that going on. So I thought to be a bit proactive and kind of look at what was available around me to kind of better my skills in the film industry. It was my first year and PBM had contacted the college and asked, do you have any young students who would come and do some work for us for the season, help us film some weekend summary videos and behind the scene videos? And luckily my tutor gave this opportunity to me, grabbed it and was like, yeah, brilliant. And I spent the whole season going all across England and bits of Scotland to film sort of behind the scene videos in the pits and on track stuff for their social media.
What were films like that you actually made?
A lot of the films were filming the riders on track, a lot of the pit side of it, just basically having a little deep dive behind the scenes of what happens on a race weekend. And a lot of it was for promotional entertainment for them to put on their social channels.
It was probably one of the worst seasons PBM have actually had, isn't it, in their existence?
Unfortunately, I picked the wrong year to go and do any of that because I think we won 2 races over one weekend, which was at Donington, where Tom Sykes was the double race winner and should have won the 3rd race, but was unfortunate in being crashed into.
There's quite a good story about that, because hadn't Paul Bird given him an absolute rocket?
Yeah.
Absolute shouting at, told him he was shit, and he should never have signed him.
Probably shouldn't be diving too deep into it, but...
I think he's made it public, you're all right.
All right, okay. The week before, basically said to Tom that, you're shit, I wish I'd never signed you, waste of money, kind of thing. And Tom kind of knew that he wasn't going to be in BSB next season and he wanted to go back to World Superbikes. Donington is his favourite track and I think he may have the lap record there, or had the lap record for a long while. And he just thought, fuck it, I'm going to go all out. The bike was going well underneath him. He was riding really well. And I think it was kind of a fuck you, Paul, and look at me, World Superbikes kind of weekend for him.
And it worked.
Yeah. That video is on YouTube and probably on the PBM social accounts.
As someone who hasn't ridden a bike much, seen that kind of motorcycling, has it made you want to ride a bike on a track like that?
Yeah, definitely. But again, maybe not so road racing. The track racing, I know road racing's a different thing that I would never in a million years touch, likes of the Northwest 200 and the TT.
Never say never.
Yeah.
Please say never. No. We haven't done a Bikes in Barns for a while as well, but the people that we were going to do just after Christmas and we couldn't do them for a number of reasons, they're now back on.
I'm going to say what's happened to Bikes in Barns.
Yeah, well, they've completely reorganised their barn, moved all the bikes around. They've got the massive collection of bikes, and we've been invited to go down and film them, and they've put them all in category order in the barn. So it'll be an excellent film that we get out of it.
Don't we need more barns? to go and look at.
We do need more barns, and a few people have offered. Some of them are just far too far away. Like, I can't remember the guy's name, but somebody offered us his barn down in Kent.
Yeah, I was going to say nowhere's too far, and then you said Kent.
Hey, well, if I've got my bike, we can make a road trip of it.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
Well, it sounds like you're going to have more than one bike anyway with your ridiculous cafe racer nonsense. Cafe racer and a CRF.
Have you ever heard Clive talk about having to once sell his big, horrible, ugly, oil-leaking blue KTM something 90?
I was wondering when this was going to come.
Fucking hell, has he? On a fairly regular basis, he hears about it. So for those of you that have not heard this episode where I spoke about it, so this promising young rugby player basically was put into a school
Newcastle,
100 miles away from here, Newcastle. He was in the Newcastle Falcons Academy.
You thought of him as a lottery ticket, basically, didn't you?
That's about fucking right, actually. Fucking lottery
odds.
But what do? Your son has got this opportunity to go and be a professional sportsman.
Mm.
Now, putting him in the school, it was a normal state school, but it was near the rugby ground, near the training ground. What are you going to do? You're going to give him every opportunity you possibly can. But it was all free, apart from we had to pay for his accommodation, which effectively over a 2-year period cost the best of 15 grand.
Mm.
And I just remember one Christmas being in a blind panic thinking, I can't pay his rent next month. And I had to sell my bike, basically. Sell my KTM 990, which, I don't want to make you feel worse, Archie, I bought with the inheritance after my father died. I effectively sold Grandad Jeff so you could go to rugby school. And did you make it as a professional rugby player? That's a fucking question. Did you make it as a professional rugby player? No, you didn't. You owe me a fucking motorbike. What have you got to say for yourself?
I don't really know what to say, to be honest. No, I didn't make it.
Sorry?
I apologise.
Do you still hope that one day, Archie, you'll come out one day and there'll be this motorbike-shaped parcel outside?
Without a doubt, that's going to happen at some point.
Why do you think every year we've gone to get you Christmas and birthday presents from Triple D?
A mug doesn't really fucking cut it.
From what you've seen of Archie's mountain biking, Clive, do you have any reservations about him taking up motorcycle trail riding?
Yes. He was like a bull in a china shop, fast as he could all the time. And he is pretty fearless, or he always was as a kid, which is why he was a great rugby player, because he was terrifying to watch at times.
Do you remember in Morzine, France, that one time over that tabletop?
We went 5 years on the trot downhill mountain biking in Morzine, it's just utterly brilliant. But I just remember him launching himself at this tabletop, 6-foot high tabletop, and just coming down on his front wheel at the other end and then just falling, going over the handlebars and landing on his back in a pile of rocks. Fortunately, I'd put him in one of my sets of motorcycling body armour, so he actually walked away from it.
Is he the most fearless of all your offspring?
Yes.
Oh, God. You've just got to get a cheap trail bike and get out there and see if you like it and see if it's for you. Because it might not be. You've just got to try it and see. That would be my advice.
How is it riding a bike and making films? Because I know both of you have been in films for Greg. I think, Dad, you've done one or something with Ollie Moto, who, by the way, is my favourite guest and he should be on more often. But yeah, how do you find riding a bike but also making a film? Like, does the filming get in the way of the riding, or does it make it more interesting?
I think all the good filming happens when you're not actually on the bike anyway. If you watch 99 out of 100 films on YouTube are GoPro stuff and just tedious as hell. So it's the good filmmakers like the Gregs and like the Ollies that film all the stuff once you get off the bike. That's where it becomes interesting. The difficulty I would personally have with that is having the motivation to do it. Because once I get off my bike, the thought of just having to get a bloody camera out and set it all up and, I always admire. I remember one time we made a film with Greg and we'd been riding all day in the rain. And I think we just pulled into Knowles Field where we were camping that night. And he made us ride in and out about another 3 or 4 times to get the right shot. And it was just like we were all knackered. And we didn't even want to do that. And I think we refused to do it, the last time. But it was just like the fact that he's actually motivated and got the energy to set that camera up one more time.
I mean, as awful as GoPro footage is, head cam footage, I think GoPros have changed it in terms of how simple it is to make a good quality film without anyone really noticing, just having the GoPro on a lot of the time. I think that's probably Greg's trick. But Greg also, I think, we need Greg to answer this question, but he does quite often, I think, have a story in his mind as he's making it, so that helps. It doesn't really answer the question, does it? But I've never found it a great inconvenience because there hasn't really, apart from you're sort of quite glad to stop most of the time. When, I know that Greg in particular has always felt bad about getting the drone out. I love it when you get the drone out. You get to stop for even longer and have a bit of a chat and take your helmet off, which is often a relief. I don't think it's the terrible thing that a lot of people imagine it to be, really.
It really isn't. And I think the other thing is we all have other cameras with us, whether it's just your phone or Will flies the drone. We all have cameras and we all just send Greg our footage at the end of a trip and he'll use whatever, takes his fancy and whatever helps tell the story.
So in one of your previous podcasts, Clive, you spoke about a trip potentially to...
You can call me Dad if you want.
Oh, yeah. Hi, Dad. You talked about a trip to Norway. When are you thinking of doing that trip, and could that potentially be my first trip?
This is beautiful because, come on, Clive, you could relive that trip that you did with your dad in a slightly different way because you were on the back of the bike, weren't you?
So the answer is yes, we can do that trip. You're going to need to get some
wonderful
riding practice in before we go because it's a really long way up. Once you get off the ferry in Amsterdam or wherever, it's a really long ride to Norway. So you're looking at a couple of 300, 400, 500 mile days to get there. And then once you're there, you can kind of slow down a bit then probably.
You've got a van. You could stick your bikes in the van.
Yeah, I don't find that thought attractive, really. I'd rather ride all the way. That's part of the challenge, isn't it?
What?
I used to take him to school in the van.
Would you want to film it and make a film about it?
Me? No, but you can.
It's going to be like Adam Ryman and his dad. It's going to just kick off everything.
Is that what this is all about, Archie? Just you being a YouTube star?
No, not being a YouTube star. I just fucking love filming shit. And especially the scenery in Norway. Being able to film something like that, cruising on a motorbike, that would be class. And I think that's another reason why I want to ride. I want to ride because I want to be able to film the stuff that you guys do, anything in relation to that kind of content. Because if I keep adding different strings to my bows in terms of riding a bike, flying a fucking helicopter or whatever, bring a camera with it, and it completely changes the game on how you can film things.
Yeah, he's right.
So hopefully there's something useful in there. If you know any young folk that are keen to get into riding, get them to give us a shout. We'll send them off camping with Archie somewhere. Right, that's it for this week. We are recording for the next couple of weeks, so we should have podcasts incoming thick and fast. And also we will be releasing the final vote for the TAMP Podcast Awards 2024, which we will be presenting at the Lightweight Adventurous Festival. See you then. Thanks for listening. We really appreciate your support. Don't forget you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And if you really appreciate what we do, you could consider supporting us on Patreon or buy us a coffee. Links are available on our website, which is tampodcast.com, tampodcast.com, where we also have a limited selection of branded stuff. But either way, please keep listening and spreading the word. See you next time.